Please welcome Vice President, Google Threat Intelligence, Google Security, Sandra Joyce.
Thank you, RSA Conference. It's an honor to be back. Over the last decade, we've built a global community of defenders that's more connected and mature than ever. Public-private collaboration has moved from a rare occurrence to a daily operational reality. This has given us unprecedented levels of shared visibility into the threats that we're facing. But while we celebrate this foundation, we have to recognize a fundamental shift in our role. We're now in a position where we can, and we must, actively shape the outcome of adversary behaviors. We have to step up, because the adversaries that we face are not standing still. Our opponents are resilient, they're well-resourced, they're backed by sophisticated ecosystems of contractors and intelligence services. We see this in the shift towards mass extortion groups like Fin11, who use their days to exploit hundreds of organizations simultaneously. The actors behind Brickstorm were specifically targeting enterprise suppliers to harvest data for zero-day deployment and downstream pivots. Now, for several years, we've monitored the trend of threat actors specializing in phases of ransomware and extortion operations. So in 2025, the shift became statistically significant within our data set. In our just-released 2026 M-Trends report, we found that the median time between initial access and the handoff to the secondary threat group has dropped from 8 hours in 2022 to just 22 seconds in 2025. Now, what this means in practice is that we're seeing a shift from opportunistic selling to pre-planned partnerships. Rather than a threat actor gaining access and looking for a buyer, criminal groups are now coordinating handovers before the initial breach even occurs. Now, this evolution highlights a significant increase in the organization, coordination, and ultimately the sophistication of the cybercrime ecosystem. And as the clock winds down to seconds, the stakes are only getting higher. Adversaries are increasingly embracing AI, which is changing the landscape in three important ways. The first is speed. The speed of attacks enabled by agentic AI will break security operations that rely on human intervention. Agentic approaches for exploit development will allow adversaries to outpace human-driven controls. Second is scale. Adversaries are scaling global operations by leveraging agentic AI and open-source frameworks like Hexstrike MCP to automate the full attack lifecycle. We've seen actors like APT31 use these tools and agentic workflows to test attacks against targets here in the United States. The third is sophistication. Threat actors are leveraging AI to significantly improve existing capabilities and uplift activity across the entire intrusion lifecycle. This will put major capabilities like access to 0 days into the hands of well-resourced threat actors. Now, for a decade, we have been saying intelligence sharing is key. But intelligence sharing alone is not sufficient. We have to do more. With threat actors increasingly turning to AI, there's a newfound urgency for defenders to go upstream and disrupt at the source. The private sector operates the very infrastructure that adversaries abuse, and this gives us a unique vantage point and the technical capabilities that government agencies sometimes don't have. And disrupting threat actors must become the status quo in our industry. We must move towards a philosophy of active defense. Now, to be clear, this is not hacking back. This is the legal and ethical use of intelligence to protect our own platforms. Our goal is to shift the economics of the entire ecosystem, to make cyber threat operations so costly, so difficult, so risky, that it's no longer a viable path for any adversary. Now, by bringing together the right partners, we can create comprehensive disruption that sticks. At Google, we're focused on complex, high-impact operations that meaningfully degrade and disrupt serious threat actors. Now, our disruption strategy is built on 4 specific pillars. First is civil legal action. We rely on legal action to hold threat actors accountable and seize the infrastructure they rely on. Second is public disclosure. We use sunlight as disinfectant to burn attacker tools and force them into costly retooling phases. The third is technical takedowns. We create a hostile environment for attackers on our platforms and those of our partners. And fourth is product hardening, which often overlooked, but perhaps the most crucial. We're not just kicking bad guys off the platform, we're driving product improvements and remediation to prevent them from ever getting back in. So let's examine how this looks in practice. I'm going to tell you about some of the disruption work we've been doing, like with IPIDEA. IPIDEA's proxy infrastructure is a little-known component of the digital ecosystem that's leveraged by a wide array of bad actors. In contrast to other types of proxies, residential proxy networks sell the ability to route traffic through IP addresses owned by internet service providers that service residential or small business customers. So by routing traffic through an array of consumer devices all around the world, attackers can mask their malicious activity by hijacking those IP addresses. We actually observed distillation attacks on our AI models using the IPIDEA infrastructure. So this creates a massive blind spot for defenders. And specifically, IDIPIA promotes 3 critical risks. IPIDEA has become notorious for its role in facilitating several botnets. Their software development kits, or the SDKs, are a primary engine for building and controlling botnets. We saw this with BadBox 2.0 last year, and more recently with the Isuru and Kimwolf botnets. It turns innocent users into exit nodes. So by hijacking residential IPs as launch pads for crime, it can cause unsuspecting consumers to be flagged or blocked by their own providers. Now, these applications effectively punch holes in home networks. And once a device becomes an exit node, bad actors can pivot to any other private device that's on that same network. So, to disrupt IPIDEA, we led a synchronized multi-pronged takedown. We started with legal action, securing court orders to seize and shutter the command domains controlling the proxy traffic, but we didn't keep the data to ourselves. We shared technical intelligence on IPIDEA's SDKs with law enforcement and platform providers to trigger an industry-wide cleanup. And finally, we used Google Play Protect, Android's built-in security protection, to automatically warn users, to remove apps known to incorporate IPIDEA's SDKs and block any future install attempts. We believe our actions have caused significant degradation of IPIDEA's proxy network and their business operations, reducing the available pool of devices for the proxy operators by millions and disrupting a tool used by hundreds of threat actors. In a single 7-day period in January of this year, we actually observed over 550 individual threat groups we tracked utilizing IP addresses that were tracked as IPIDEA exit nodes to obfuscate their activities. This includes groups from China, North Korea, Russia, and Iran. By February 3rd, we saw meaningful and immediate impact. For example, Okta had a 90% reduction in requests from IPIDEA IP addresses. Well, Comcast had a 75% drop-off in traffic from exit nodes. We also directly observed the impact through adversaries kind of whining about their infrastructure being taken down. Here's the translation. I feel like that's an advanced persistent tantrum, don't you? And I like the sound of Guardians of the Galaxy. It has a nice little ring to it. But we should acknowledge that IPIDEA has been able to rebuild some of their infrastructure following that, but we are going back and doing even more disruption. So this shows that disruption is just like security. It's a process without a finish line. And it means we need to continue to take action to disrupt adversaries and their infrastructure. It takes a community effort to truly knock these networks down. The action that we took against IPIdea is a serving notice to this often overlooked corner of the threat actor ecosystem, that their actions don't go unnoticed, that we will continue to disrupt them again and again. Let's look at another example. When we evaluate a target for disruption, we look for two specific leverage points. First, we look for points of failure. Where can we disrupt to cause the most immediate damage to a specific threat actor? Second, we focus on pivot points, or places where a single action can have scaled impact across multiple actors at once. Now, we found such a pivot point in the certificate reseller market. We identified a specific actor, a certificate reseller, who is operating an industrial-scale automated business, providing a streamlined pipeline for threat actors to launder their malware and make it appear legitimate. So the single reseller was a primary source of trust for a massive range of disparate threat groups, acting as automated gatekeeper for malicious activity across the web. So to disrupt this operation, we coordinated directly with certificate authorities, or CAs, to initiate a mass revocation of compromised certificates. By sharing specific TTPs, we didn't just kick actors off of these platforms, we gave the CAs the telemetry needed to sharpen their future detection. Now, our investigation uncovered over 100 malicious certificates tied to the single operation. Now, the impact was immediate. We stripped away their enterprise-grade legitimacy, forcing them to pivot to individual validation certificates. Now, because these are reserved for personal projects, they're largely untrusted by modern operating systems and security tools. So by providing actionable intelligence to the CA, we successfully amplified our impact across an entire network of actors towards less trustworthy credentials. So within 10 weeks, we saw these actors migrate to a far less sophisticated service, one that relies on shared certificates. This is a win for defense. Shared certificates are significantly easier for us to detect, track, and revoke at scale. Now, active defense also means maintaining the integrity of our own platforms. GridTide is a prime example of why this matters. We worked with our partners, and you know who you are, partners. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for working with us. We worked with our partners to disrupt a global espionage campaign targeting telecommunications and government organizations in dozens of nations across 4 continents. The actor is a suspected PRC Nexus cyber espionage group that we've tracked since 2017. And we confirmed intrusions in 42 countries when the disruption was executed. The actor sought to exploit the trust and reliability of Google's ecosystem, abusing Google Cloud for their heavy lifting and Google Sheets for their stealthy mechanism of command and control. By leveraging legitimate services, they aim to blend into normal enterprise traffic, making traditional detection incredibly difficult. Now, our response was designed to create maximum operational friction. We didn't just block their access. We dismantled their environment. We terminated all Google Cloud projects controlled by the attacker, effectively severing persistent access to environments that were compromised by the novel GridTide backdoor. We blinded their command and control by disabling and revoking access to Google Sheets and their Google Cloud accounts that they abused to hide in plain sight. We also released a comprehensive set of IOCs to the global community and deployed tailored signatures to intercept related malware to ensure they couldn't simply migrate these tactics elsewhere. But perhaps most importantly, in collaboration with partners, we identified and disabled all known infrastructure. This included the sinkholing of both current and historical domains to further dismantle the group's reach. Now, these intrusions took this adversary years to build. By stripping away their underlying environment, we've ensured these operations cannot be easily reestablished. Now, we expect this actor will work hard to reestablish their global footprint, but we're not going to make it easy for them. The same active defense philosophy we applied to proxy networks and certificate resellers is now being applied to the most important frontier of all, artificial intelligence. So as adversaries adopt AI, we have a unique opportunity to disrupt them at the source. As a major provider, we take this responsibility seriously, and we use 4 key levers to stay ahead. The first is we disable malicious infrastructure, just like we did with GridTide. If you use our tools to facilitate an attack, you lose access to those tools. We proactively disable the projects, the accounts, and assets of known bad actors. And we also harden our AI models and classifiers. We operate a continuous feedback loop for Gemini and for other AI models. And by directly feeding the threat intelligence into product development, our models learn to recognize and refuse malicious requests before an attack can even be generated. Automating vulnerability hunting and patching also disrupt adversaries. We're moving from manual patching to AI-driven hunting. Tools like Big Sleep are already discovering 0 days before they can be exploited. Well, CodeMender is using Gemini to automatically fix critical vulnerabilities in the code itself. And finally, we developed advanced defenses and threat models. Our teams at Google DeepMind are building specialized defenses for generative AI and deploying active monitoring across our entire ecosystem to identify misuse in real time. We're not going to wait for the AI-powered attack to happen. We're using AI to make the entire ecosystem inherently more secure. Now, all of these efforts point to a single conclusion. For disruption to work, we must activate as an industry. This starts with building resilience. Every disruption has to feed intelligence back into our defenses, making the entire ecosystem more hostile to future abuse. We want to ensure that once a tactic is burned, that it stays burned. Now, this leads us to systemic protection. We're moving beyond the era of cleanup. By using intelligence to build new and native protections, we aren't just kicking bad guys off platforms. We're fixing the root causes to make it harder for them to ever get back in. For this to work, we need a whole-of-community approach. This isn't just the job for tech giants. Small and medium-sized enterprises are equally vital to this mission, and we have to embrace a flexible partnership model that prioritizes the most effective collaborators for each specific threat. And when we align this way, we do more than just improve our metrics. We create a new status quo, moving from merely counting threats to actually countering them. And we have a historic opportunity to shift the narrative of cyber defense, once from a common and constant retreat to one of collective action. This means moving past competition towards radical partnership. I'm asking you to join us in making disruption an industry-wide movement. These partnerships between law enforcement, tech providers of all sizes, and defenders on the front lines are the only way to build true global resilience. Together, we can finally break this whack-a-mole cycle. By dismantling entire networks instead of chasing individual indicators, we prove to our stakeholders and to the public that defense actually works. The vision is clear. We have the intelligence. Now let's use it to tip the scales. Together, let's transform fragmented defense into a formidable, proactive force that leaves no place for bad actors to hide. Thank you so much.